So thanks everyone for joining us for the 2024 Technical Assistance Program Informational Webinar. Before we would get going, I just want to let everyone know we will be recording this webinar and then posting the recording on our website later for those who weren't able to join us. So without further ado, I can get us started. As we move along, if you have any questions, feel free to throw those into the Q&A, and Lauren and I will make sure to monitor that and answer them as we go along. So what we have in our agenda for today, first I'll give some kind of introductory information on the Technical Assistance Program, go through the eligibility and requirements for the program, go over the service types that we have available this year, some of the application, what the application will look like, and then we'll have some time set aside at the end for Q&A. So first of all, just a brief overview of the Technical Assistance Program. This provides MORPC staff assistance to our local governments or other members within the Metropolitan Planning Organization boundary. These are services intended to advance the goals of our MTP, Metropolitan Transportation Plan, through implementation of specific MTP strategies focused on improving active transportation and transit infrastructure. So we'll highlight some of those strategies here shortly, but you can also see all of those on the TA program guide that's on our TA webpage. So the TA program awards technical assistance services through a competitive application process, and this application opened for this cycle last Friday on the 15th. So we'll walk through some of the highlights of that application process here today. The evaluation committee will then assess the completed applications based on the criteria outlined in that program guide I mentioned. Members that are awarded technical assistance through the TA program must be prepared to have these services completed within 6 to 9 months. So some of the specific MTP strategies that we're hoping to address with this round of technical assistance, for one, focus on active transportation and transit infrastructure. So again, you can see these strategies listed within the TA program guide on our website, but as you can see here, they relate to expanding our bicycle and pedestrian networks through the region, implementing the COG vision and the active transportation plan, increasing the walkability and bikeability of our neighborhoods, facilitating multi-jurisdictional collaboration, and increasing the transit connectivity and accessibility of our neighborhoods. Some other strategies in the MTP that the TA program looks to further collecting and maintaining crash data, and prioritizing safety, transportation safety, implementing countermeasures to that end, and also developing a transportation system that's equitable and serves all people. So now a bit on program eligibility. The following criteria must be met in order to be considered eligible for the MORPC TA program. So the applicant must be a local government or MORPC member within the MPO boundary. As you can see on that map there, that's the MPO boundary. The services that are being requested must be within the scope of the services specified in the program guide or generally within the scope of the TA program and/or MORPC staff expertise. The application must be complete, which includes submitting a customized scope of work and signed letter of commitment from local leadership. And the application must be received prior to the application deadline of 5 p.m. on Friday, October 13th, 2023. We'll have a final slide that highlights all the important dates and deadlines for the program. So just a review of the applicant responsibilities. As part of the applicant commitment to receiving technical assistance services from MORPC, the following requirements will apply. Within the application, we ask for an estimate of how many staff hours will be committed to the TA activity. MORPC staff and program partners will conduct the planning process together with staff from the applying agency or organization. There must also be a staff member designated as project manager for continued coordination and communication with the MORPC team. Provision of any relevant data or materials that MORPC does not already have. Regularly, bi-weekly is preferred check-ins with MORPC staff. Identification of and regular communications with appropriate community stakeholders. Participation from all departments within the local agency relevant to the project. and consistent and timely review of all project materials submitted. Okay, so with that covered, I'll now go into the activity types that are being offered for the 2023 TA program cycle. So we've identified several activity types intended to help guide Central Ohio communities to the projected changes in regional transportation needs. These activity types were developed based on the vision and goals established again by the MTP, Active Transportation Plan, Complete Streets Policy, and Central Ohio Greenways Vision. Each activity is designed to address specific strategies established in the MTP. So this is a summary of the activities that are available this program cycle. Most of them are existing from previous cycles with the addition of the trail town planning. They've been grouped into 4 main categories, as you can see here: active transportation planning, COG visioning, bike and pedestrian safety, and then land use planning. So applicants are encouraged to select from one of these predetermined activity types, each of which has a sample scope of work outlined within the TA program guide. Those sample scopes of work are intended to be a guide that can be modified to suit individual community needs as part of the application process. If a community is interested in applying for a project that differs from the project types outlined here, there is an option to submit your own scope of work for another activity, but there are specific requirements for which we will highlight shortly. So first of all, active transportation planning. We have 3 services under that umbrella: active transportation project prioritization. So with this, we'll review and refine all of the potential active transportation projects in the MTP within a local jurisdiction. So take a look at what are the gaps in the local network, what should the priorities be based on in-depth analysis work and engagement with stakeholders, and then submit those top priorities for the metropolitan into the Metropolitan Transportation Plan so that they will be eligible for attributable funding and for federal funding. Complete Streets Policy development is another one. So we work with you to develop a complete streets policy to be adopted into local agency practices. And finally, transit supportive infrastructure planning. So this has made a lot of headway recently in terms of the committees that are being developed for this. So this activity type would look at, similar to active transportation, project prioritization, identifying potential transit supportive infrastructure alignments. Again, infrastructure that's within 2 miles of a transit stop, and looking at kind of prioritizing those for the TSI dollars that we hope to be available for the region. Central Ohio Greenways Visioning, another bucket of services. So we have 3 services within this. First of all, Central Ohio Greenways Vision Refinement. So this is a very kind of detailed, fine scope study that looks at the specific kind of alignment of a trail. So that image there is a good example of a service that we did with Metro Parks back in 2022. So we kind of looked specifically at the area between Scioto Audubon Metro Park down to the future Great Southern Metro Park, and determined the most feasible alignment for this was the east bank of the Scioto River. So that was moved from a previous alignment based on a number of factors and kind of engagement with different stakeholders. Another service within this category is trail access and connectivity planning. So this is a little bit of a larger scope, looking at a community's connectivity to the Central Ohio Greenway system. So their local network connectivity to a Central Ohio Greenway. We've done a lot of work within this study recently. So this really gives us an opportunity to look at how we can maximize a community's access to trails and parks, and look at sort of take a network connectivity approach to that. And another new service that we have within this category is trail town planning. So I'll go into a little more depth on this since this is a new study. So the trail town approach is a way of leveraging trail tourism and active transportation opportunities to promote mode shift, economic development, and quality of life enhancements. The recently completed COG Trail Town Framework identified strategies to encourage communities to pay attention to trails, invest in them, and improve trail to town connections. Any community located within 2 miles of a regional trail of significance, as identified in the COG vision, is eligible to participate. While MORPC is exploring opportunities to fund and resource a regional trail town designation program, local communities are encouraged to develop their physical and cultural connections, proactively engage in the anticipated regional program. This technical assistance offering will support communities seeking to do that through a placemaking exercise that will result in a community readiness assessment and a public-facing community profile. Following this activity, the participating agency will be empowered to promote their community as a walkable, bikeable, trail-oriented community. They will also be well-positioned to participate in the anticipated Regional Trail Towns Designation Program. For anyone looking for more information on this, I know there's a COG forum coming up soon, so look out for some information for that that'll go into depth on trail towns and include a workshop on trail towns. The next category of services is bicycle and pedestrian safety. Again, 3 services within this one. Complete street safety audit. So this will be a detailed review of the crashes involving pedestrians and bicyclists in a jurisdiction, identify the priority locations to then conduct a detailed audit based on that data, and then based on that audit, determine what are some safety countermeasures to look at and to implement to address those safety concerns. Systemic pedestrian safety analysis is another service. So this will review specifically pedestrian crashes and look at specific countermeasures that can be implemented to improve pedestrian safety in a jurisdiction or in specific problem areas. And then finally, safety action plan development. So this is work focused on developing a local comprehensive safety action plan that would make a jurisdiction safe streets and roads for all eligible, specifically for the implementation grants. And the city of Delaware is currently, we're currently working with them to develop a safety action plan for them. And the last category we have is land use planning. So we have a couple of services under that category, transit-oriented development planning. So looking at the local policies and codes that a community has and identifying what are some potential changes to make to make some areas more friendly to transit supportive development. And then a conceptual development framework, looking at a particular site or strategic location and helping to set the stage for a future development plan. So that image there kind of shows the example of a conceptual development plan that was done for Jefferson Township. And then if a community finds that none of the kind of predetermined activities or scopes fits well with what they're looking for, they can apply for an other activity as long as it focuses on moving from plan concept to project implementation, and it aligns with the goals of our MTP, ATP, or COG vision. And the applicant provides a detailed scope of service, scope of work, then this is something that is available to applicants as well. I'm seeing no questions in the Q&A, so I will forge ahead. And I'll go over some of the information in the application. So this is currently available online through FormStack. You are welcome to view the application without submitting an application, so you can go through and and see how it works on there. And then the application details are also included in the TA program guide. So the 2024 application, when you click the link to the application, you'll find yourself on this landing page explaining how to complete the application. So you want to make sure to read the page before completing the application. When you click the link to the application, you'll find yourself on this landing page explaining how to complete it. So there's some key things to note. The first 2 pages are required documentation. So this is the second page. These are both required documentation. So you'll go in the drop-down list and select the activity type that you're looking for, the preferred scope of work. That's something you will attach on the final page of the application. And then a staff commitment based on the scope of work and the estimated schedule. And something you can do as you go along too is save and resume later. So the third page, this is sort of kind of the narratives. So it includes 6 questions that determine how each application will be evaluated. I will discuss each of those in more detail here shortly, but these are open-end responses that do have a character limit, as you can see here. So that should allow you for at least 500 words. And this will tell you kind of how many you have left as you work on that. So again, on the final page is where you'll upload your required attachments and submit the application. So you can see a sample letter of commitment here that we've made available, so you can feel free to use and adapt from that. And then again, you'll want to include your scope of work document and your signed letter of commitment. Something to note, you'll want to make sure that you're only attaching the documents once you're ready to submit, and that the size of the attachment is maximum 25 megabytes. And then this is where you'll submit the application. So that'll finalize the process for you. So a couple quick notes on those attachments I mentioned. Brief scopes of work are provided in the 2024 program guide for the predetermined activity types. So this kind of serves as like a template for you to use, but you want to make sure that you're including additional detail in your submittal that is specific to sort of service work that you're looking for. And then again, we have a sample letter of commitment available. Feel free to tweak it as makes sense, or to write your own. So this is something that is available to you. Okay, still seeing no questions in the Q&A, so I will move along to the application evaluation process and then the program timeline. So the evaluation committee, an evaluation committee will assess the completed applications based on application criteria that I will go through here. That's also outlined in the TEA program guide. So first off, community objectives. It's one of the questions. This is where you tell us why this particular activity is important for your community and how assistance from us will benefit the effort. If your community has other planning documents referencing the need for this type of study, you want to note those here. Scoring for this criteria will be based on how clearly the community objectives are described, how much they align with the MTP, ATP, and CogVision, and whether or not technical assistance will benefit the effort. MTP strategies is where we want to hear from you about the specific MTP strategies you hope to address through conducting this activity. So this should include your vision for how the completion of the selected activity will result in implementation of the MTP strategies that you list. Scoring for this criteria will depend on how clearly a connection is made between the selected activity and advancement of the identified strategies. Next, implementing regional priorities. This is your opportunity to indicate how you see this effort advancing the specified regional plans toward implementation. So as we noted earlier, the goal for this round of technical assistance is to move plans such as the MTP, ATP, and CogVision forward. So scoring this criteria will be based on how clearly your response demonstrates that connection. For equity considerations, we would like you to identify specific populations within your community who are currently underserved and may benefit from the selected technical assistance activity. Scoring for this criteria will depend on the identification of specific populations and how clearly your response demonstrates the potential benefits of this activity to those groups. For local commitment and collaboration, we want to know how much the larger community will be engaged in this effort. While it may not be necessary to conduct public engagement through these efforts, we do expect key stakeholders to be involved. Scoring for this criteria will be based on how identification of potential relevant stakeholders, how they might be engaged, and what opportunities that engagement could establish. For the final question, leveraging investment, we want to know your plans for what comes next. Once this technical assistance activity is completed, what do you hope to do with the results? Scoring for this criteria will depend on how well the applicant demonstrates a vision for successful implementation. So a quick look at the timeline. So today we are hosting the informational webinar. Another date to mark on your calendars is October 13th, the deadline to submit applications. So in order to be eligible, applications must be submitted before then. We will then go through the kind of evaluation process with the committee through October, and then notify awardees in early November. And then kind of kick things off, start the scoping process in early December, and then begin in earnest on the technical assistance work in January. And again, these are 6 to 9 month activities that they would complete in the late summer of 2024. So that is all the information on the technical assistance program, the evaluation process, application process, and everything. So at this point, if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A or unmute, whatever makes sense for you. If you think of any questions following the webinar today, obviously feel free to email myself or Laura, and we'd be more than happy to provide any more information or clarity we can.